That includes congressional candidates. Do you honestly think that she's being promoted by the rich? She's not. They actually don't like her. So come on. Let's not turn this into cutting off the little bit of gains that we've made. I think she was co-opted the moment she won her primary. Pax, come on. Come on, man. Don't buy into this narrative. Like, she's not perfect. You still believe in Congress? It depends on what you mean by believe in Congress. Do I believe that she was co-opted? Co-opted how? What exactly? What exactly is it that she's not doing that she should be doing, that she has the power to do, that isn't a complete fucking waste of time? Think any challenge to the status quo is coming from Congress? Absolutely. I mean, what do you think Bernie is? What if he's not a challenge to the status quo? If he was not a challenge to the status quo, why did they fight so hard to stop him? It can happen. That's not all corruption. There's a reason why the majority of donations that AOC's campaigns run off of are fucking small dollar donations. If she wanted to make money, she could. Ellen Omar, known for how well she gets defended in Congress. Yeah. Like, that's why I hate these narratives, too. It's all because people are convinced that they know how the government works, and they don't. They don't. Getting one person elected means you got one person elected of hundreds of people. There's over 400 people in the House. AOC is one vote. She is not on any committees. She is not in leadership. The only thing she's in leadership tepidly in is the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And the effectiveness of that caucus is incredibly debatable. But she's a part of it because she is a progressive in Congress, and she is trying to change that. There's a number of rules that have been slowly being adjusted in that caucus. That's where she has some power, but not much. She votes in line with Nancy over 90% of the time, right? And what are those votes? What are those votes? You're going to pick out like the 2 or 3 that I disagree with her on, and then you're not going to look at the other ones that you actually would agree with her on. Stuff that doesn't matter? Well, if they don't matter, then bringing up the stat that she votes with her 90% of the time doesn't matter either. Because then those are nothing votes. So bringing up that she votes 90% of the time with Nancy, what the fuck does that even mean? See the issue I'm having here? She's disagreed with her enough to where that she's been removed from all the committees that she used to be on. Clearly, she's not liked in leadership. When do we get to vote on our material conditions? Good question. Maybe the answer isn't just voting. When do they what? Okay, what sort of conditions have been set up to support a general strike? How do we feed people? How do we feed people in poor areas? How do we keep the roof over their head? What infrastructure has actually been put in place to make sure that people don't wind up on the street dying, to actually convince people to want to strike in the first place? What work has been done? And I wanted you to keep in mind, because I know this is coming, that you think I'm totally against a general strike. I'm not. I'm saying set it up. No one is doing that. They're just yelling general strike and then jerking off their dicks in the mirror, not doing anything. You want a general strike? Start setting something up so that people can survive while on it, to convince people in the first place to want to do it. But if you're just going to sit there and just be like, oh, well, you're just talking down to the idea. I'm not. I'm saying the conditions have not been set up to provide for people if we were to try to do one. So no one would join it. Because the very first question you're going to get from somebody, anyone on the street, just pick anyone on the street. If you're like, hey, you want to join a general strike to take down the system? They're going to be like, okay, how am I going to feed my kids? How am I going to eat? How am I going to pay my rent? Who's going to stop them from evicting me? What have you actually set up? I never said don't. I said set it up. I hear a whole lot of talk about how we're going to do this, and then no one does fuck all to actually set up the infrastructure for people to actually want to do it. It doesn't go call for general strike happens. It's set up the conditions for which people can be willing and want to be a part of a general strike and be protected, because none of us have fucking money, and then do the general strike. Do you think that work labor strikes just happened because somebody just decided to walk out? No. A lot of questions had to be answered to talk to, again, as you like to talk about, material conditions in order to protect people. These things had to be set up in the first fucking place in order to convince people to want to work out, because they knew they were going to be out of work and they weren't going to be making any money. They were still going to need food. They were still going to need shelter. They were still going to need water. They were still going to need things for their kids. They were still going to have needs. And those needed to be protected first. So they found ways to find fundraising. They found ways to get food to the people. They found ways to provide money to them so they could continue. They created a strike fund. It doesn't happen. You create the conditions first. You watch too many movies where you see the one guy stand up and walk out, and then slowly everyone starts trickling out. No, that isn't what speaks to people. That's a movie. You want a general strike to happen, be a part of an organization to set up these things that are going to protect people, to make people to answer these questions of, what the fuck do I do now? I walked out. I don't have any money. I was already in debt out my ass. I was already behind on all my bills. I was living paycheck to paycheck. What do I do now? If you have no answer for that question, then you also have your answer for whether or not a general strike can happen. Otherwise, you're just yelling general strike into the void, and that's nothing. That's masturbation. It's making you feel good, and everyone else is just stuck watching you. And that's why I get mad about it. Like, for fuck's sake. This isn't rocket science, but people have such a limited understanding of how things work that they just go ahead and ignore the material conditions that they themselves seem to care about. I just get so fucking frustrated by this, man. You're not, you have financial things that you're dealing with, Pax. We talked about it. I'm dealing with it too. Somebody calls the general strike and you participate. You show up. You're like, all right, I'm picketing. What's going on with your house? Oh, it might be fine for the first week. Oh, yeah, I have some stuff that's left over from the last bit of money I made. But when that money runs out, then what? Then what do you do? You still got bills. You still need to eat. You need water. It's the middle of winter. So you're calling on people in Michigan to go outside in 16-degree temperatures with no money and no future prospects for money. No protection at all. By all means, do a general strike, but do it right. Instead of just saying, let's all just do it, and just hoping that everything else will just work out. That's never happened. Ever. No movement was started by someone just doing one singular action and everyone just joining in and everything was just fine. No. Organizations had to be built up. Protections had to be taken care of. Planning had to happen. If you're not willing to do that, then you're a fucking joke. And you don't actually care about general strike. You just want to say something edgy. The thing is, at what point are the material conditions bad enough for the average person? We already have a situation. I'm not talking about the material conditions of how things are now. Yes, the conditions are right for us to want to do this, but what isn't set up is any sort of means to provide for people when you do it. So when you go to someone and try to sell them on the general strike, you have more than platitudes to give them, because the question they're going to ask is, all right, cool. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yes, shit is fucked. Yes, we need to stand up to our oppressors. Yes, yes, yes. But I'm going to need to eat, motherfucker. My gas is going to get shut off. My kids need a place to stay. My kids aren't going to spend every single day on the picket line. Am I going to live on the picket line? Because it's cold out. Who's going to buy me a tent? What do I do for my basic needs that this general strike is going to provide? And if you are confused by that question, then you do not have the conditions set up to have a general strike. You're just saying it to be edgy, because we need people that can do the organizing. One person can't change things alone. You need people to help be providers. Yes, that is what I'm talking about. That is what I'm talking about. Like, we don't have this. We have a bunch of people who aren't even talking about these things that are real. We're just so terminally online. Yes, I said it. We're so terminally online that we think we can say these catchphrases and they mean a goddamn thing. Like, this is the thing, like I was talking about, why I'm so pissed off when I found out that fucking Haas lives in Michigan and he knows nothing of labor organization. And it's the same ignorance being pushed from friends. If you have no answer for why people would want to join beyond their oppression, if you want to speak to their material conditions, you speak to their material conditions. And that's the conditions that also include what happens to them during the fucking strike. Yes, look into the IWW. Join a fucking organization. Build a community garden. Stockpile food. Like, if you're serious about doing this, set it up. Be a part of the organization to set this up. Talk to people. Get people together. And create the means for people to have something to balance themselves on while they're striking. Otherwise, you're not doing a goddamn thing. You're more useless than Congress, because at least what they do has an effect. This isn't hard. This isn't hard. Literally, you see this trucker thing and everything that's gone behind it and all the prep that they had behind them. It didn't just happen. A bunch of truckers just decided to head up there. Even on the right, they understand that there's a bunch of planning that has to go into it. A bunch of money that has to happen. But for them, the money just fucking gets dumped on them, because they don't challenge the establishment. And you expect us, who are actually challenging the establishment, to what? They still had to raid a soup kitchen? I mean, still. That's probably just like one portion of them, though. Like, they were backed by tons of money from people who had tons of money. A lot of it not even in this country or in Canada. Fucking Bangladesh. They understand this. Why can't the left? That sounds like money laundering. Ah, you see, but if it's in another country, who's going to enforce it? No. They were donations, guys. They were donations. I just get so tired of the left not being serious about anything. So fucking tired. It's either we got to cater to the right wing, we got to bring them over, or we got to go over to their side and we need to negotiate with them, blah, blah, blah. Or it's, calling for things like revolutions and general strikes while not having anything set up to do that. Just going, revolution, general strike, cool, brah. Oh, you set up a speech for fucking Jimmy Dore? Good for you. What did that do? Where he showed up and he said, let's do just a general strike. Don't support the Democrats. Meanwhile, there's like 20 people who are like, yeah. And then they think about it. And they go, okay, so if I quit working tomorrow, then what? Somebody should ask Tommy Vietor why it took so long to notice a nearly $10 million GoFundMe. One of the guys from Pod Save America. Oh, yeah. Just, man, I pray for a more serious left. You know, you want to talk about the real critiques of the left? I've got them. Like, you're not going to hear good critiques from, like, fucking right-wingers or centrists or anything. It's all going to be bad faith bullshit. You want to hear the critiques of the left? Come to a lefty who's actually serious about this shit. I'm dead serious. I want a general strike. But once you step out that door, once you quit that job, your bank account goes into the negative. Eventually. It hits zero. When you go to swipe your card to pay for that sandwich at Speedway because you're hungry from your day of picketing and it gets declined, someone has to have an answer for that person when that happens. And if there is no answer before people join that, they're not going to join it. Speak to people's material conditions, both currently as a means to create the want for a general strike, and speak to their material conditions as they are for when they do join the material strike or the general strike, and they will join the general strike. This isn't. I don't know why this is difficult. It's like you guys think that you just like throw a body and wheels together and it's a car. But I called it a car. I said car, and then I put wheels down and I put a body on it. But it's not driving. I have nowhere to sit. There's no seat belts. There's no windshield. And I called it a car. Why doesn't anybody want to ride in it? See, the real reason you don't want to ride in my car is because you're just fake leftists and you don't actually believe in the cars. At least Fred Flintstone had a seat. Oh, God damn it, man. The Musk School of putting things together. Yeah. Just yell at it until it happens. Difference is, it seems to happen when you have endless amounts of money. Look, I don't mean to get so angry, but it's just so unserious. It's such unserious argumentation. It's so unserious. And it's like you live in a fucking fantasy land. And I don't want to get mad at friends. I don't want to yell at friends. You think I want to do that? But I literally tried to explain it to you calmly, and you still just push this idea that, like, oh, well, just don't do it then. Why? Because it's hard? Because it's fucking hard? No shit, motherfucker. No shit, it's hard. That's why no one's done it. It's not because not enough people called for it on fucking Twitter. It's because it's hard. Because there's things that need to be set up and things that need to happen first. And if you're not willing to do it, then you can't expect anybody to join you. You can't be surprised when somebody living paycheck to paycheck says, hey, when my paycheck goes away, what happens? You can't be surprised by that. And if you are, you're not a serious person. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You live in a fucking fantasy world. Go to fucking Never Never Land, Peter Pan, and fuck off away from me. Because I don't want anything to do with you. Until you get off of that land and join me in fucking reality, I don't give a shit about you. I'm sorry. It's just really fucking annoying. I just want the left to win. I just want the left to win. Is that too much to ask? Is it seriously too much to ask that the left like does the things that allows them to win? Instead, we have all these unserious people just thinking that they can wish a thing to happen. There was organization for the Chaz, and how did that go? Because it wasn't good organization. A lot of the plans that they had were fucking half cracked, and there was no one serious taking control of the situation, and it erupted into disaster, and people were hurt and killed. And if you ask the organizers of it what happened, they have no answer. When at the time, there were probably people who didn't join it, who wanted to ask simple questions. Okay, so what do we do if someone shows up with a fucking gun? And they're probably like, what, you want police? What are you, a pig supporter, huh? Like, no. Because the police aren't going to protect us. What do we do if that happens? Why don't you read Fred Hampton? Why don't you read Bakunin? That'll answer your question. I did, and they answer those questions, but what is your answer? Have you set these things up? No. Because it'll be fine. We won't have to worry about it. Because we're the good guys, right? Nothing bad ever happened. No lefty does anything bad ever. It's just so fucking stupid. I care so much about these causes. I really fucking do. And that's why I get so angry about it. But god damn it, I just want you to be serious. I want you to be smart. Instead, it's just a big old ball of stupid. No one wants to plan. No one wants to answer the hard questions because they're hard. Nothing worth doing is easy. No one ever said it was going to be easy. That's a mantra I fucking live by my entire life. Because I often take the most difficult route to do things. But it's true. Even if you try to choose the easiest routes. Still ain't all that easy, is it? Guys, please just take a moment to think about how serious you actually are about this shit. And if you're not willing to take the steps to answer some fucking questions for people who have legitimate concerns, then you need to reevaluate yourself. You really need to look inward. Don't look outward and get pissed at other people. The reason I'm getting mad at these people is because they can't have an answer for that question. They just think I'm working against them when I'm literally saying, set it up. It goes back to one of my original questions the first time I talked to Dirtbag, and he was talking about setting these things up, mutual aid networks and everything. And I was like, okay, so let's say you live in a really poor area that has very little resources. No one's able to provide for anyone but themselves because they have nothing. How do you get resources to them? Crickets. Just please think. Please. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow. But the cat came back the very next day. 1936. I just want to give people an idea of what all we got to deal with. I'm hoping this concentrates on the lead up to the strike, because I want you guys to see how much organization had to come in. I want people to notice how much prep went into the strike before the strike actually happened. It didn't just everybody marched off this line, because that's what a lot of people who are pushing for general strike right now by saying general strike on Twitter over and over again and hosting like online events to say general strike and why we should, but also we shouldn't get vaccinated, and also Donald Trump was a better president than Joe Biden. How that's not actually doing fucking anything at all. By 1936, writes historian Stephen W. Sears, it dominated more than 43% of the domestic market and was the nation's most profitable automaker. But GM had maintained its grip on the automobile market at the expense of its own workers. After laying off thousands, it hired many back, but didn't take seniority into account and paid lower wages than before. Assembly lines were speeding up mercilessly to raise productivity and restore profit levels, writes Sears. Workers chafed at the grueling pace, the dangerous work, and the company's habit of laying off workers at will. I've absolutely seen them hire 100 men and fire 100 all the same day, recalled Ray Holland, a Chevrolet worker, in an oral history. You never know whether you had a job or not. You never knew, excuse me. Though the Depression brought suffering for workers, a flicker of hope came in the form of National Labor Relations Act, known as the Wagner Act. The 1935 law guaranteed workers the right to organize and join labor unions and to engage in collective bargaining and strikes. It also set up the National Labor Relations Board, a federal agency designed to enforce labor law. United Auto Workers, a recently formed trade union, had slowly and secretly begun organizing at General Motors. If the union was to bring the automobile industry together, it had to go after its largest employee and do so strategically. Organizers decided to focus on the Fisher Body Plant No. 1 in Flint, Michigan, home to 7,000 workers and the place where car bodies were made. Organizers met with Flint workers at their homes and talked them out of walking off the job right away. Instead, organizers planned to stop production through a sit-down strike in January of 1937, after Christmas bonuses had been paid and a new labor-friendly governor was in power in Michigan. You see how much went into this? Before they made the decision of what exactly they were going to do, they said, okay, right after you get paid your bonus, so you have money to get by, you're also going to get a more labor-friendly governor in office. So that's 2 specific things that they had to plan on, alongside of them secretly meeting with all of these workers. Oh, Carpe Pex, good to see you. Perfect timing. We're talking about how much organization had to take place before even setting up the original sit-down strike. How many things had to align and how much work had to be done before they even planned the first step. It's important, really. You know, if this was something that people wanted to plan on rather than just saying words on Twitter and expecting people to just go, oh, yes, let's just do that and not worry about how I'm going to feed my child or end up on the street. I'm not pointing out why I'm literally pointing out an example of how it happened, Pax. I'm literally pointing out how this can happen. I'm just pointing out that the people who are pushing it aren't doing anything but posting on Twitter. And this is the actual work that needs to go into it in order to do it. Yeah, so do it. So people should do this work. I'm telling people to do this work. And working class people will get behind you, because if you don't have an answer for them when they ask, how am I not going to lose my home? How am I going to feed myself and my kids and my family? Then they're not going to join on, which was my entire point. Because the grifters who are pushing the idea that we can just snap our fingers and jump on general strike are not actually doing anything to cause a general strike. And any one of them could, but they're not. What I'm pointing out is people should actually do that. Set up the organizations to do that, instead of listening to grifters. Losing respect for capital as a start, that's a meaningless platitude. People already hate their jobs. They already hate their boss, but they have to pay their bills. They have to buy food. They have to maintain health, but they still fear them. What they fear is ending up out on the street in the middle of winter. That's what they fear. And why do they fear that? Because they need to make money. Give them an alternative. And that alternative, it can be answered through mutual aid. You've been in James's streams, you heard James talk about times when he used to go around as a group, find people who are being evicted, and block them from being evicted. That didn't happen by just snapping a finger. They had a plan. They had to plan it out. They had to group together and set up an organization to kind of do this and how they were going to do it. But that's what they fear. They don't fear the people. What they fear is what will happen when the paychecks stop. You see what I'm saying? And that's what I was saying yesterday. None of these people even give a shit about that. I want them to. I want people to recognize the reality. I want people to be able to answer these questions when they're asked, because that's real world questions that need to be answered. And if you can't answer that question for them, you're not doing anything for them. You're not ready for the strike. You need to set these things up first and then say, we have this thing set up to where we're going to help you keep your house. We're going to block you from eviction. We're going to provide you food. We're going to provide you water. We're going to make sure that your heat doesn't get shut off, that your electricity stays on. We have a fund set up where we're all working together. We have all these mutual aid networks that will make sure that you're fine while we're in the process of this mass wave of strikes. And then you start talking about the platitude. Then you start talking about how good things will be afterwards. Then you start talking about the goals. Because people are already there as far as the goals go. People are already there, but they're paycheck to paycheck. And you're telling them to stop taking a paycheck for who knows how long with nothing set up to avoid them getting kicked out of their house and starving on the street. I'm not at all against a general strike. I want people to set up the conditions for which one is actually reasonable and people actually want to join. Because as is, all I see is people doing YouTube videos and posting on Twitter about it. Just saying, general strike. Oh, we're going to host a summit for a general strike on fucking YouTube Live, and we're not going to talk about any mutual aid networks. We're just going to talk about the problems, talk about platitudes, and then do a bunch of anti-vax shit. There needs to be safety nets in place for it to work. Yes. Like I said, this sit-down strike, the things that had to come in place. First of all, there had to be a law passed to protect people organizing for collective bargaining. Next, United Auto Workers existed in the background and had to quietly go around to every single house of a specific plant that they knew would be beneficial to go to cause a sit-down strike. Next, you have to answer the question about how do you pay for your bills? Why are you connecting anti-vax shit? Why are they connecting anti-vax shit? That's a bigger question that you should be asking yourself. Don't ask me that. I didn't make that connection. I'm not the one going around saying that the truckers in Canada, thought you were talking about me? No, I'm talking about the people who go online, the people who are supposedly pushing this movement, the leaders of these movements. They're not bringing anything to the table except words, meaningless words, and basically leading them to the right. Yeah, they're the people who are saying that the truckers are a working class movement. You know, the people who say that vaccine mandates are anti-labor. It's those people. That's who I'm talking about. So I was talking about yesterday too. But yes, you can get people together to do this stuff. You have more access to that than I do. You yourself do not have money. You're struggling. But you're closer to areas that have a ton of fucking money. I'm not. If I got together with people in my neighborhood and started talking about building mutual aid, they would look at me like I'm crazy. Because they'd be like, what? We don't have anything to give. Anti-vaxxers LARPing as truckers while 90% of actual truckers in Canada are vaxxed. Yeah. This is what I'm talking about though. We need to set these things up and there needs to be serious actors involved. And there haven't been serious actors involved. I plan on this summer finally doing the community garden now that Eli's up and walking and we can kind of, you know, he can kind of be left on his own and he'll listen to us more or less. And that's going to be my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part too.
But I'm going to be one of two community gardens that exist in this neighborhood. And the most that's ever given out is excess. My goal is to grow this stuff, use some of it, sure, but to donate it to homeless shelters. Organize who with what money? Well, I mean, there's a lot that can be done. You don't have access personally to money. But what you do have is access to people who have money, people who have the resources to give. Anyone can get people to come together with no money. But in order for it to be effective, yes, there needs to be money coming in. And in California, there's a fuck ton of money. Your area, I guarantee there's people you have connections to, either directly or indirectly, who have a fuck ton of money, who are well-meaning and care about labor. You talk to them, you say, I want to see if we can set up an organization. What do you want to do? You know, I think this would be a good thing overall to help workers of the country. Maybe look into IWW and see what they recommend. Like, joining organizations is crazy important part of it, because a lot of times they have something sort of set up, or at least they have like the musings of it. They say, you know, we have this plan for it, but we need this, this, and this, and you help them figure that out. It's just, I just can't stress enough that it's just not, if they're well-meaning and cared about labor, would they have the fuck ton of money to begin with? It usually happens for the opposite reason. Not necessarily. My oldest brother, he does very well for himself. Not left for wanting ever. You know, he's an engineer. His wife's a teacher. They're doing quite well. Live in a rich area. They're doing good. Cares enough to keep it. He cares enough to know. He cares a lot about labor organization because he was raised by a union dad. And he told me fairly recently that he's turning against capitalism and recognizes how bullshit everything is. Especially since he's watched his little brother struggle with it, you know, for decades now. Like, work really fucking hard and not get anywhere. Like, people like that you have access to. Just because someone makes a lot of money doesn't mean that they want to do it, or doesn't mean that they want to do it while exploiting others. Billionaires, they're the ones that they can only exist if they're stealing it from people. Hasn't worked on my sisters. You just got to keep going. Just got to keep going. There has to be that spark there. They just don't watch me struggle. They hear about it at holidays. I mean, reach beyond that. Like I said, join organizations. I'd say not having an enjoyable life, so part of that is, oh, you're still talking to Captain's Log. Like, my point in bringing this up is that it's not as simple as people are making it out to be. Because literally what you're doing is showing that it's impossible. Not me. I'm telling you how it's possible. It's incredibly possible. I believe in it. But posting about it on Twitter is not going to make it happen. Coming to my channel and getting mad at me for pointing out that the things are not in place to make these things happen yet, and that the majority of the people who are pushing the idea of a general strike are fucking grifters who have no interest in setting these things up in the first place and just want to make money off of pushing an idea and feigning at leftism, that works against making it happen. Like, I am not an expert on labor rights, and unionization and strikes and everything, but I do know enough to know that it's not nearly as simple as these idiots make it out to be. So whenever I listen to them talk about general strikes, there's not even room to ask them these questions that need to be answered to bring people on. It's like this amorphous concept to them. Like, oh, just general strike. What does that mean? Direct action. Okay, what does that mean? Explain that to me. What do we need to do? How can we survive? How can we continue? What needs to be set up? How do we get there? What have you done? It's one reason that the pandemic has been hard for me, but luckily I'll be part of a union in my new job, so I'm excited to learn about the politics and leadership of that and how all that works. Yeah, definitely get involved with your union. The couple of union jobs that I had, I worked far too much and was too tired to get involved with. Democracy is not a spectator sport. Yes, you got to get involved. If you're saying that doing these things is impossible and you're worrying more and more about how it's impossible, it's not me that is talking you out of doing it. It's you choosing to not do these things. And it's not even just on you, too. I want to stress that, too. This is not just a personalized issue. Because like I said, chances are you just haven't joined a certain organization to find out that these things might be in the process of being set up. And that your participation can help with that. Or at the very least, your participation can help spread the word to get these things set up, to find the resources in order to set them up in the first place. Strikes do not just happen. Labor action does not just happen. These people didn't have Twitter to post about it. It was a ton of fucking work. Everything started around 1935. Remember, the strike started in 1937. 2 years of work, and it was all on the ground. At most, maybe some homes had telephones, and that's it. They had to show up in person, all these homes, to convince them to do this and to convince them the right way to do it. Because they were on board. If the union was to bring the automobile industry together, it had to go after its largest employer and do so strategically. Organizers decided to focus on the Fisher Body Plant number 1 in Flint, Michigan, home to 7,000 workers and the place where car bodies were made. Organizers met with Flint workers at their homes and talked them out of walking off the job right away. Talked them out of doing this just walkout. Because it was during the Great Depression, they would just replace them with more desperate workers. And they came up with a better plan. Instead, organizers planned to stop production through a sit-down strike in January of 1937. And here's the key. After Christmas bonuses had been paid, so they have money for bills, they have money to survive, and a new labor-friendly governor was in power in Michigan, meaning you had the backing of the governor as they came in. All these things had to fall in line. All of these things took work. All these things took word-of-mouth campaigns. All these things took actually getting together with groups and setting these things up. All these things are incredibly possible. But then, if I type general strike into Twitter, they're scared and it's time. General strike. Okay, what have you done to set it up, Ron Placone? Nothing. More perfect union. Strike. There's them actually showing a real strike. It wouldn't surprise me if 100 towns and cities and bridges had a trucker revolt by tomorrow. It's a general strike. You know, the thing that involves trucking company owners. Placone is a bad example. He's a door biter. There's going to be a lot of bad examples. And eventually you start to recognize, did you know a general strike is happening in Seattle right now? Really? It's not. It's just a strike. It's a union-led strike. It's a Teamsters strike. This is planned strike with a organization that already had a strike fund in place to pay people. That is not what a general strike is. Like literally, first comment. That's not a general strike. Solidarity with the Teamsters, they fucking rule, but you need to learn what words mean. The problem with America is that people would rather discuss the cosmetic use of the term general strike than talk about how fabulous it is that anyone is doing something to change the system. And that's wrong, though, because this is not a general strike. It's a strike. It's not a general strike. General strike is all of labor coming together. There's another example. Oh, I just posted a thing that says general strike. None of the conditions that led up to the general strike and none of the work that was done to set it up so they could do that. Cool. Okay. Why is there nobody organizing a Twitter space for a general strike? Twitter spaces. We got Twitter spaces, people. Why aren't we doing a Twitter space? Why haven't we gotten a Discord? The convoy is setting things up for a general strike. Where the fuck is the left? Like, let's keep going. Let's see where we're at with general strikes. So far, we got the truckers who are not unionized and are largely the owners of trucking companies who just are fighting against doing basic basic fucking worker protections. When Placone didn't speak up at Jimmy over the Boogaloo thing, he was lost to the world. Placone's always been that. He's always been that. Anyone in the vicinity of Door is going to wind up being that. Like, I'm pretty much fucking done with Richard Wolff. They're just an older generation of the 1-6 crowd. Yes, exactly. With less energy. Yes, exactly. This right here is a legitimate response. I would love general strike, but I would also hate unsuspecting workers to be led off a cliff with no union protections or coverage, which would be provided by unions and lose their jobs. And all to promote your hashtag give butter. I have been called the Scully of the left also. And the response is, this person is deeply unserious about general strikes and solidarity in the community. If people think unions is the only answer, they are leaving out the workforce that has no union. Who protects them? This person is trying to distract from my efforts and by highlighting my campaign. Do we see the problem here? Do I need to spell it out? Starting with, if people think unions as the only answer, it would be a mass unionization. Bargain unilaterally then. Yeah. Like, this is just such a fucking... these are the people who think that they are serious about general strike. People that believe that a general strike is happening at the border with these truckers, when it's not. It's a bunch of anti-vax idiots and owners of trucking companies. It's glorification of a phrase. It's a catchphrase to them. It's platitudes. They talk about the platitudes. Yes, things are bad. We know things are bad. This person, when do we start lighting this town on fire? When people aren't going to get fucking... when they aren't going to fucking lose their fucking houses and not be able to feed themselves. No answer. No answer. Just like speaking down to things. Football and Trucker Revolution on a Sunday. Is there anything more American? Yeah, I know. Sparing my good name like this. Shame. General Strike, it's good to see you. Well, that's what they're doing. Because I believe in general strikes. I believe in setting up the conditions for them. But, like, and I don't believe that pointing out that those things don't exist yet should be discouraging away from it. It should encourage people to want to set these things up. But instead, I'm being told that I'm a naysayer and against general strikes because I'm pointing out, hey, why would anyone want to join a movement that's going to tell you, oh, don't worry about you losing your home and winding up on the street in Michigan in 19-degree temperatures in fucking February. Don't worry about that. What about these platitudes? Don't work against us. Believe in me all you want, but the power is inside you. Yes. power to set these things up. But most of the people who are talking about this are not actually serious. Like, here's somebody actually talking about how these things are set up. 60,000 workers brought Seattle to a standstill in the 5-day general strike. Right now, 300 striking Teamsters have halted the city's construction. And that's union. I can't set this shit up either. I don't have the resources, and nor do I have the connection to any resources. It does happen through unions. It doesn't happen just through unions, but it does happen through some forms of getting together with collective bargaining. But you need to set things up in place to allow people to actually want to do it. And if you're not going to do that, if you think that it's just too hard, if you're going to cry and bitch and moan about how hard it is to set these things up, and that bringing it up is poo-pooing the idea of a general strike, you're not actually serious about the general strike. And you need to look at actually doing this stuff. I think a bullhorn would look really good on you. Okay, thank you. I'm bad at public speaking, so I am not that person. All I'm trying to do is just say that all these things are possible. If people set it up, I will join. I don't have the resources. Call my people. This is seriously, it's just all platitude. It's, I support this thing, but I don't want to actually set it up. Why won't anybody just do a general strike? Or there's complete morons saying that the truckers, oh, well, this is somebody who's right. Seattle's doing it, well, they're not doing a general strike. That's not what's happening in Seattle. Let's get more into what happened before the strike could even take place, because we haven't even gotten to that. This is them saying, these are the conditions we're going to do, and they hit snags. First question is, okay, great. Where's the union and mutual aid fund reps? Got to contact a number of organizations, see what they have set up. Like I said, it's not a matter of these things already exist and you just need to find them. It's people need to build them. They need to know that they need to build them if they're not in place yet. Or if there's organizations that are trying to build them, they may need manpower. They may need financial resources, connections to financial resources. People think these things are impossible because the work is hard. But the thing is, yes, the work is hard. Doesn't mean you don't do it. Get people thinking about it. Get other hands on the job. Get people thinking about it. Get other hands on the job. Kinda. More hands make lighter work. Yes. Organize. Yes, organize. And organize doesn't even just mean that you set up organizing. It means join one that's already existing. I'm not asking everybody to become a leader. I'm not asking everyone to personally set it up themselves, because that's individualist bullshit. That's bootstraps nonsense. A lot of these organizations already exist, and what they lack is manpower and funds. Want is there. These things can happen. We have access to these things if people know that the things are there to grab onto. But people don't know that. So when you come to your paycheck to paycheck worker in an impoverished area of Flint, Michigan, and you tell them to join in a general strike, and there's nothing set up, and they're worried about that next paycheck, and they ask you, how am I going to keep my home? I'm already in debt over my ass. I'm already behind on all my bills. I'm struggling to get by. There's no jobs around here. And that's the majority of the city. It's the majority of, that's all of us in this city. And we don't have the resources to provide for each other. The same thing that I asked Dirtbag when he brought this up and was talking about, just mutual aid network, mutual aid network. Okay. If people have nothing to give each other and barely have enough to give themselves, how do they set that up? It has to come from an outside group into areas that have high poverty. That's how it's got to happen. Mutual aid networks are not just local. They need to branch further than that, because some of these organizations, like I said, if it's all poor people who have no access to anything and they can barely get themselves getting by, what do they have to give each other? What do they have to pass out among everyone? Nothing. It needs to be a collective effort. Always has been, always will be. So let's go on and look at some of the things that get in the way, because these things didn't just happen perfectly like a lot of people like to remember it did. Plan was derailed on December 30th, 1936, when workers at the body plant saw critical equipment being lugged into railroad cars to be sent to other factories. Word was out that the Flint factory was a Union stronghold. Workers gathered for an emergency meeting, then flooded back into the plant the strike was on. Now, men who had worked in the plant occupied it around the clock. They slept on sheepskins, piled up car mats and makeshift beds, and ate food donated by local grocery stores, farmers, and families. Outside the plant, women raised funds, took care of families, and even formed human shields to fend off police. All these things had to be set up. All these things had to be planned for. General Motors had been taken by surprise. Though it had suspected workers might strike, it wasn't aware that they would use the new tactic of sitting down or occupying the plant. Sitting down was a way of ensuring the factories wouldn't operate and workers wouldn't be replaced. Though General Motors tried to stop the strike in the courts and even received an injunction that said the workers were trespassing, the effort backfired. The strikes were technically illegal, but when you have a mass democratic insurgency, you really create new law on the ground. You see how much shit had to happen? But it happened. The fact that it happened shows it's possible. But the work has to be done, rather than just shouting general strike in the void. Like, most of the people who are talking about general strike, let me show you what they sound like.
I declare bankruptcy!
You know what I'm saying? It's not that hard. It's not that difficult to get. It's really not. But like a lot of really dumb people who want to shout down smarter people than them who actually know what they're talking about have convinced other people that the way to do it is you post on Twitter, you call everything a general strike, you don't actually do any planning, and then all of a sudden you start talking about getting together with the Boogaloo Boys and becoming anti-vax and not, and never only voting third party. Which how's that shit working out in Virginia? The only place where the fucking Movement for the People's Party got ballot access. We already went over it, but it's not doing good. Leadership left after the people started. Have you been reading Lenin? No, I don't read any of those. I haven't read any of that shit. Everything that I know about unionization is from growing up here. Being the son of a union worker, walking the picket lines with my dad as a young child, having a father-in-law who worked for the UAW, studying the history of Flint and Michigan, studying unionization, being a part of 2 different unions in my time working. Everything I know about unionization and how these things come together is all personal experience with unions. I have not read Marx. I have not read Lenin. He was talking about the labor unionists the way you're talking about general strike LARPers. Is that a good thing? I don't know. Am I? Is that a good thing that I'm talking about them like that? Because I mean, I want these people to set these things up. I want to believe that they actually might. That's actually a good thing. Yeah. If you want these things to happen, then you have to join the people who are actually serious about this and are actually setting up these safety nets for people so that they want to strike. That's been my point all along with this shit. Otherwise, like I said, they're just this.
I declare bankruptcy!
General strike! General strike! It's a general strike! Let's general strike! I'm doing the same thing right now by saying that. Does anyone believe that Michael actually declared bankruptcy? Or are there other things that you need to do in order to file for bankruptcy? Exactly. Seems to me he was disparaging the idea of spontaneity in favor of organization of professional revolutionaries. It's just that our circumstances are way slack, so we have to start from a worse position. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. I dare to dream. I'm sorry, I do. Because, I mean, I've seen how this works out in history. These things had their naysayers. Of course they did. There were also fellow workers who were naysayers. Or there were people who thought that things were going to be easier, and the very second that the things got hard, they bailed. They fucked off. You see plenty of stories of that. You hear all the rosy shit until you start digging into the more intricate parts of these histories. All you hear about, usually in schools, is thing happened. This is how it happened, and this is what resulted from it. We have to reach the labor organization stage first. He was speaking from that already being the case. Yeah, I agree. And how do you set that up? You will get no disagreement from me. Hey, it's Mark and Eli. I hope you're doing well. Hope you liked the video. If you liked it, why don't you like, comment, and subscribe? My child may stop picking on me. Uh,